wait any longer for these two great men. The first person I want to bring to the podium is Ralph Mitchell. He sits on the board here at Guilford Child Development. We're so glad to have him on the board, and we're so glad to have him today here at this special day. Ralph, come on up. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm excited about introducing Odell. Let me tell y'all something. About 27 years ago, I was on the Elders Council at Mount Zion Baptist Church. And I kept seeing this young guy run around. He was about in his 30s at the time. And it's 20 years difference between the two of us. And I said, what is he doing? And he had this idea that he wanted to put together this group. And it was a welfare liaison group. And he had this idea about what he wanted to do, and I'm sitting there and I'm just watching this guy. And he knew me and what I did, and my whole world and life has been built around leadership. Okay? And in this room, everybody in here has leadership ability. Everybody. Now, I don't know if you're using it or not, but let me introduce Odell. From what I saw of him, from the beginning and all the way through. First thing that I look for is integrity and trust. And with Odell, he is trusted. He has my trust. He's also direct and truthful. Any of you all that know him. He can present the unvarnished truth in an appropriate and helpful manner. He keeps confidences. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes you can tell people, look, don't tell anybody else, I'm going to tell you this. And the first thing they do is run out and tell it. He's also somebody who admits his mistakes. And I have not found him misrepresenting himself for personal gain. Managerial courage. Now this is one that I travel all over the country meeting with all kinds of executives and stuff and look at supervisors, managers. Managerial courage. He doesn't hold back anything that needs to be said. He lets people know where they stand. And he faces up to people problems on any person or situation. Look, I was over there watching him work with those folks. And some of those folks were hard to love. He is not afraid to take negative action when it's necessary. The last thing I have to say that I would wish this on everybody is he is an example of compassion. I found him, he genuinely cares about people. He is concerned about their work and their non-work problems. Isn't that right, Fred? Is available and always ready to help, is sympathetic to others, not as fortunate. And he demonstrates real empathy with the joys and the pains of others. Folks, I just want to bring somebody up here who's been invited to the White House many times. Somebody who likes talking just to people and helping people. Odell Cleveland.
Good evening. I'm a Baptist preacher, but I'm not going to be long. I'm serious. I know it's long already. You know, Ralph said some real nice things, but what Ralph didn't say is something I'm going to say. I know many of you in this room have no idea about the experience that I'm going to talk about, but it's okay, because it's not your story, it's my story. Let me introduce Odell this way. Odell Cleveland, Glenda Cleveland's baby boy, who she calls Pumpkin. Odell Cleveland, who grew up in the projects. I know no one doesn't know anything about the projects, so let me explain. Odell Cleveland, who grew up in public housing. Odell Cleveland, who grew up poor. Odell Cleveland, who grew up in a family where the dad just left. Had a girlfriend and just left. How do you just leave? You just don't come back home. You just leave. Odell Cleveland, whose mother got divorced, and 4 of us, and since our father left, I think we were supposed to eat grass and drink dirt. Odell Cleveland. You all don't know anything about that because that's not your story. That's my story. Odell Cleveland, who had a mother who at the age of 16 got pregnant out of wedlock. We used to say that. You all don't know anything about that. Nobody in here ever got pregnant out of wedlock. I'm talking about me. Odell, don't talk about your grandma back there. Odell Cleveland, because this ain't your grandma's story, it's my story. Odell Cleveland, who many people, well, my mother was working in Manhattan Shirt Factory every day while we lived in the projects, going to school at night to get her GED, and had a massive stroke at the age of 25, and they thought she was going to die. Now, the thing about the stroke was this. Back in South Carolina, my story, in the 1960s, yes, I'm old, when my mother got sick and she went to the hospital, Robin, Medical University of Charleston, South Carolina, she had insurance, but they sent her home. They said, come back when the free clinic is open. She got sick on a Saturday, no, excuse me, on a Friday evening. The free clinic was on Tuesday. Because she was black, my story. Because she was a single female, my story. Because she was poor, working poor, my story. They sent my mother home to lay in bed experiencing a stroke X amount of days longer than she should have. So while my story, you all don't know anything about being black, being poor, being discredited, come in and need services, and people look right through you. My story. Because of our biases, prejudice, and stereotypes, they look right through you. And a lot of the people who looked right through my mother was the people who were getting paid to take care of people like my mother. So as my mother lay there in bed, it's like 4 months in the hospital, they said, family members, I came from what some may call a dysfunctional family. I know nobody don't know anything about dysfunctional families. I'm talking about me, South Carolina in the 60s. I know everybody in here, Michelle, families are perfect. I'm talking about me. Somebody said, he's talking about him. No, y'all need to say this. He's talking about him. And since he's from the project, keep going. He's going to talk about his mama. But since he's from the project, you can't talk about my mama. All right? Okay, I just want to let you know the project rules now. Don't get it twisted. Don't let the pretty shirt fool you now. You'll be okay. So as my mother laid there, the family decided that if she dies, who's going to take care of the 4 children, Howard? I had a little sister, looked like a little doll baby. X amount of family wanted them. I had a brother and sister who didn't get as much trouble as Odell got into. Let's just say it like that. They were a package deal, Michelle. A couple people wanted them. And, Odell was left. And I admit, Odell probably wasn't the best person as a child. But you know, a child is a child. And that's why I love what's happening here, Robin, because these are children. They didn't pick their circumstances. They are here wanting help, and adults are making decisions that affect children. So since I'm that child that nobody wanted in my family, you know it's bad when your family don't even want you. Now come on now, it's okay, I'm free. Don't, I'm free. So if your issue, that's on you, I'm here because I'm free. So when your family don't want you, then what do? My mother said, she said a prayer to God. Said, God, allow me to live long enough to see my children grow up. Now I thank God now my mother's 72 years old, still living. I'll be going down there, taking care of mom, you know, running mama's boy. You know, that's all good. So, what you see today looks like glory, but what I'm going to talk a little bit about is my story. When I heard about what's going on today, you get excited. Just like Christmas morning. You look at the pretty picture Michelle painted, Robin painted, everybody painted, and it's like, great, we're going to do this, rah, rah, shiskambo, everything's great. The picture is beautiful. Just like you buy something in the store that you want, and you come home and you open the box, and you're ready to go. And then two things happen. Two little pieces of paper shows up, and one of them says, assembly required. Remember when you were Santa's helper? Christmas Eve, you felt good because you already got your gift. Santa Claus delivered this gift, excuse me. You might have got it on credit, might have paid cash. Someone old enough to remember layaways. Somebody we hope don't know nothing about five-finger discounts. But you had it. And you read it. Some people was like, what's a five-finger discount? Some of us know. So all of a sudden you get there and all of a sudden you have pieces. Pieces. And you have to assemble the pieces. And all of a sudden the joy and the excitement went away. So just like this initiative, now when the cameras go away, you're going to have pieces. You're going to have papers that say assembly required and another piece of paper to say how does it function, the instructions on how to operate it. Now when you get to that point, agencies coming together, you're going to have some common language. I'm going to use, for example, something called a net. A net. And when I say a net, so many people think of different things. Sports people think about what? Basketball net, soccer net, blah, 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 right? Those outside people say fishing nets, insects, nets, all this kind of stuff. But when you start thinking about it, the net that entraps people, or the net around the social nets. When you come in and look at that and see a net, the agencies that's involved, let's just say this is one of the agencies. Nice and pretty, you have your thing going on. You're going to have to come out of your silo. You're going to have to come out of your silo. For this to work, you're going to have to come out. And this is a nice, pretty net. The days when I was slim and trim and playing basketball, we won a couple state championships, national championships, and we would cut these things down. This is a net. Another agency might come around, Frank McCain, who I love. Just, Frank, let me just say, you're a good dude, man. All jokes aside, you're just a good dude. I just want to say that to you. I know you're just a good dude. But I knew your mother, and your mother was, I met your mother, I'm sorry, she was good, and I met your father. So the apple don't fall far from the tree. You are a chip off the old block. Only thing I don't like about you, you better looking at me, but that's okay. So we have another net. Now this net is a white net and thick. This net is a green net. For this thing to work, some of the stuff is going to have to get cut. So the people who are proud of their nets, you're going to have to cut some of this stuff out. You're going to have to cut it. It's like, you ain't cutting my net, and you can't make this work. Because Michelle will cut you and your net. Michelle is one of the few people I'm scared of. She will cut you and your net. And the people who work for her, I don't even work for the woman I'm scared of. Oh yeah, I need you to come speak. Okay. I need you to support United Way. Okay. Cut your net, and now your net's going to have to blend with somebody else's net. And if you're not willing to cut your net, then you can't play. You can't deal with all the things that's going to happen here. When you think about it, and you look at all the holes that could happen in the net, I fell through the net. Because what the net should have been is a safety net. A safety net will allow us to climb and chase our dreams, knowing quite well that we have a support system under us. I fell through the net. But what I want to say to the mothers and the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the caregivers here, don't take the safety net that's being built here today and turn it into a hammock. If you turn it into a hammock, you're going to lose. I know you're tired. I know you're frustrated. My mother was tired. My mother was frustrated. But if Glenda Cleveland, with a brace on her right leg and a cane, can walk 3 miles to a school, when they were going to put Odell in a special ed, we don't use that anymore, a special ed class, and says, no, he might act a little funny, but he's not crazy. And I don't want to offend anyone. But if my mother could walk, who people would call me in school, crip. If a cripple, I'll use that term, I'm talking about who? And you can't do what? Because I'm from where? Okay. If she can do it, it's no excuse. It's no excuse for you to get tired and sit on the hammock, because if you sit on the hammock, you're going to fall asleep. Because you're tired. You want to go, but if you're tired, you sit there, your body's going to go to sleep. And if you go to sleep, you're going to get played and not paid. And grandma and grandpa, those kids depending on you. So if you go to sleep and they send these papers home about just sign these papers because they're going to test these kids. Nothing against testing. But you need to understand what testing means and what testing does not mean. You need to understand.
Good evening. I'd first like to thank God, the Board of Governors, WFMY, the local foundations who have supported us, Welfare Reform Liaison Project staff who nominated me, and our board of directors, my family, my lovely wife Beverly, Calvin, Tecumseh, and Adrian, my Mount Zion Baptist Church family and the whole faith community who's been a big part of this, my senior pastor and mentor and co-founder of Welfare Reform Liaison Project, Bishop George W. Brooks, and Mr. Neil Belenke of the United Way, who's just really helped us when we needed help. And a special thanks goes to a special lady, my mother, Miss Glenda Cleveland. She found herself a divorced mother with 4 children and a limited education. While working a full-time job and going to school at night to get her GED, the stress and pressure of life caused her to have a massive stroke at the age of 25. As she was lingering there, dying, not knowing if she's going to live or not, as I understand it as a child, she asked God to allow her to raise her children. And through that, she raised us to have faith in God, credibility, a work ethic, and to always look back and help others. All of her children graduated 4-year institution. My mother got her GED, and she went back and got her 4-year degree from the College of Charleston. Mommy, tonight, they're giving me an award for helping others. But the real award goes to you. I hope that this night is what you and God had in mind when you ask him to spare your life to raise your children. Because the real award for me is that God has blessed us to allow you to live, to be the mother that you are. Thank you. You know, sometime when someone look at a presentation like to those who care, you think to yourself, well, this person has done well and it's been easy, or this person hasn't made. But that's not always the case. Usually for anyone to get to a certain point of any kind of achievement, it's so many people who have helped them along the way. In my case in particular, I could talk a little bit about my background, all the struggles that my family went through. I think back that a lot of times you hear that people were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Well, not me. On May the 6th, 1960, I was born to Calvin Odell Cleveland Sr. and Glenda Adams Cleveland in Greenville, South Carolina. My mother found herself divorced with 4 children, and we moved to Charleston, South Carolina with our grandparents. Charleston, South Carolina, and all the beautifulness of Charleston. But I saw it from a different perspective. We lived in the projects in Charleston, South Carolina. Right up the street from the historic Battery, we would go downtown to fish at the Battery, and we would just play on all the different monuments. Little did I know at the time that all those monuments meant something. We would go and to Colonial Lake. Colonial Lake was just always beautiful. We would go there and we would fish all day. A lot of those fish we would catch were probably too small to keep, but we kept them anyway. Then one day I remember that my mother got sick.
Or living on what they call the project then. There was one day that Mommy was not feeling well. She had a headache and she went to lay down. And then she called me in there and she asked me to bite her fingers because they didn't feel right. And when she did that, that scared me. So after she did that, I called my grandparents, Mother Reese and Papa T, and said that Mommy's not feeling good, and she asked me to bite her finger to see if she could feel it. So then at that point, they came over. I went to the hospital February 10th, 68, because it was just me and my 4 children. My oldest daughter, Glenda, called her grandparents. They came to get me, and they saw something was badly wrong, but they didn't know what it was. Therefore, they took me to the hospital this Saturday. Got to the hospital, they could see something was wrong with me, but they said I had temporary paralysis, so they sent me back home. And to come to their clinic on a Tuesday. I had insurance, but nobody asked me did I have insurance. They sent me home with no medicine, just sent me home, come back to the clinic Tuesday, because that was a teaching hospital. My parents saw I wasn't getting any better. Monday, my mother decided to call her doctor in. He came to the house and looked at me and said, just lift my hand and said, stroke. I know it is. I've seen what I've seen today. You take her back to the hospital. They did take me back to the hospital. The doctor were not that glad to see me come back, because they said the one that was working Saturdays, I told her to come to clinic Tuesday. What's she doing back out here today? But they kept me in there. I went in February the 12th, and I got out around Easter of that year. I don't remember what day, but I think it was close to 2 months in there. And they did find out that I was stroke, but because I was just such a young woman, 25 years old, that's what made it so hard for them to discover.
Now, when my mother was in there for about 3 or 4 months, what I overheard the family members saying is that, if she doesn't make it, what's going to happen to the children? Selected was my baby sister, who was beautiful. She looked like a baby doll. Second was my oldest sister, who was always very attractive, smart, quiet, and never caused any problems. Third was my youngest brother, who was like my oldest sister, quiet and did not get in trouble. Then there was me. I understand that there was additional conversation concerning who would take me.
I had 4 children. The youngest one was, I think, about 16 months, and my oldest one was 8. So one sister, that's when I was in the hospital, they agreed what they would do with the children. My oldest sister would take 2. In fact, they wanted everybody. It was somebody who wanted everybody but Odell, because he was so devilish bad to them. In school, he had so many problems, and he wouldn't listen. Hard-headed like he is today.
I never knew who selected me or who would have been stuck with me, but thanks to God that at the same time that conversation was happening among our family members, my mother and God was having this conversation. And my mother asked God, please allow me to live long enough to raise my 4 children.
I had 4 children, and I've seen what happened to children that don't have a parent. And I was going to fight as long and as hard as I can, and that's what I did. That was my greatest wish. I developed pneumonia in the hospital. At that time, I couldn't even tell you my name. I really feel that's one of the reasons I live, because I wanted to live, because I was sick enough to die. And sometimes just the desire will keep a person here. I went through a religious experience and I got better. I got better, but I still was handicapped. I had lost the use of the arm and the leg. So I can thank God for a lot of stuff, and even more because it could have been worse.
I also remember the fact that we were able to go and see her one day in the hospital, and I remember them bringing her down, and she was in a wheelchair. But interesting enough, this lady in the wheelchair didn't look like my mother, didn't even recognize her. We finally recognized my mother when she smiled. And just that smile as children, we ran up and we hugged her. And at the time, we didn't notice the fact that she was paralyzed on her left side because she had a blanket covering her left side. All we noticed was our mother.
Well, it was good for me to see the children, but some of the children didn't even know who I was. Well, naturally, that hurt, because I didn't want to be there in the first place. And I wasn't the best person to work with, because I just wanted to get out of there, talk to them every day about going home.
You know, when my mother got ill, it just affected me a lot. It made us move from a stable household that we were aware of and we were comfortable with, and we moved in with our grandparents. You know, I moved around to 5 different schools in 5 different years. I was in elementary school. I used to get in trouble all the time, and the school teacher and the principals wanted to put me in a special ed class. And in those days, we call it the trailer. And, you know, my mother said, no, we're not going to put him in a special ed class. And they said, well, if he doesn't accept this assignment to go into special ed, we're going to put him out of school. So they put me out of school, and my mother kept challenging them. Well, to get me back in school, I had to go and see a doctor. In those days, we call him a shrink. And I could just remember them putting all these different color probes all over my head, and he asking me all those questions. And it's just, the room was just so cold. And, you know, we went through that, and he got his report, and he reported back to the school, and, you know, they said, well, nothing's wrong with him. He's just going through some serious issues as a child, all the changes. And, you know, you think about all the poor black kids in the early 70s that was put in special ed class that didn't have a poor black mother who walked with a brace on her leg and a cane, and who would be willing to walk 2 miles to go down and challenge a school system that said, we're going to put your son in special ed. And she said, no, we're not.